Welcome, folks. Welcome. How y'all doing, friends? David here. This week's Griscom stream. It's going to be a little testy here in Texas for the next couple hours. It's not looking very good. ERCOT has, been releasing kind of conservation notices throughout the past few weeks, occasionally, because the electricity production in the state has not been up to par. I mean, a lot of it has been the failures of natural gas plants. Let's be clear about that. But today it looks like wind is not producing very much out in West Texas. So it is very likely, it's looking like that we might not be able to meet demand, which would mean that there might be some blackouts for people in the state, and myself included. So I'm going to be watching that closely. I've got my AC, lowered, so higher temperature inside the house. But these kind of things, just the way they're set up, usually these conservation notices don't get the kind of results that are necessary. So I don't know. It's frustrating. It's worrying. From what I'm hearing, if you are listening in Texas, what I've been reading and hearing is that if there are to be blackouts, they would probably be on the shorter side. They'd be rolling more like 10 to 15 minutes versus losing power for days on end, like what happened during Uri. But not good, folks. Not good at all. And it's also very worrying because there's a lot of big pushes to build out more power plants in the state of Texas, and very likely, if we do see some kind of disaster here, a big push through for more dirty fuels, since potentially wind might be getting us in trouble. And again, people are always quick on this. That wind in particular and solar have been very helpful at times on the on sort of picking up the slack when some of these natural gas plants have gone out. But the problem with wind and solar is that while on a day when a natural gas plant goes out and there might be a lot of solar wind production, that's all fine and good. But also when you sort of get a perfect storm of high heat, high demand, and low wind, the grid is under threat. And, none of this would even really be an issue if we had fixed the problems with the Texas grid after Winter Storm Uri. But we don't really have competent people in control of the system here. Texas is not alone, by the way. I know for the people from Louisiana up to Minnesota, there's also worries that those grids might not be able to produce enough energy to meet demand as they're going through record-breaking heat waves as well. Difference is that they can maybe get some electricity from other places. Texas does not have that luxury. So I don't know. I mean, if there's any questions or anything people want to talk to on that, it's just something I'm watching. So if the stream goes out, why. Also, just while we're on Texas and stuff, this evening I'm going to be hanging out with Jason Miles and the crew at This Is Revolution, and we're going to be talking Texas and Texas politics. So I believe 8 Central. So come by for that if you're hanging out this evening. But anyways, folks, this is Griscom stream. This might be a little bit shorter since, again, I'm going to be jumping and talking with Jason and all of them in just a couple hours. But feel free to jump in with any questions in the chat. Hoping to do a little bit of a Q&A. I did watch the Republican debate. I usually skip those, but I was sort of chilling at home and I was able to catch a good amount of it. I also watched, which if you haven't seen, I very rarely would suggest this, but the Tucker Carlson interview with Donald Trump might be one of the funniest Donald Trump interviews I've ever seen in my life. And I was hoping to have more prepared, but I do want to share. This is a cut from the recount. I was trying to get the full version of this from the video, but I wasn't able to find it in time. But Donald Trump was just on another plane last night. He was talking, of course, he was coming after Biden and Kamala. He was going on, and this is one thing that Trump is really focusing on, by the way, something to note. That he's really focusing on these more like eco-friendly housing uh, water saving technologies in the home. So he's talking about sinks that don't have enough water pressure. He's talking about shower heads that aren't strong enough to get your beautiful suds going when you're washing your hair. He's really fixated on this kind of message. A lot of stuff about EVs and things like that. So that's the more political stuff, but I don't know. It's just like this guy's brain is truly fascinating to me, and I wanted to share this if you missed it last night. It's him talking about the Panama Canal.
Why is China allowed to conduct imperialism in our hemisphere?
Well, yeah, and it's far beyond Cuba. It's all over South America.
Yeah, in the Caribbean.
So we built a thing called the Panama Canal. We lost 35,000 people to the mosquito, malaria.
Yeah.
We lost 35,000 people building. We lost 35,000 people because of the mosquito. Vicious. They had to build under nets. It was.
Why is China?
For testing.
It is extremely cruel of me, and I think a failure by whoever clipped that to not get the rest of it, because this entire monologue that Trump goes on for like 3 minutes about the Panama Canal is amazing. He's like, there were 9 wonders of the world, 9 wonders. There used to be 7. Maybe there could be more wonders. But we went and we built the Panama Canal, and these mosquitoes, these vicious mosquitoes, they were building them under nets, and we sold it for $1. We sold it for $1. Terrible deal, terrible deal. I mean, it was just prime grade Donald Trump, just wild tangent stuff. Really nasty things. I mean, Tucker Carlson, as we all know, is an extremely dangerous and worrying figure. And he kept on trying to amp up Trump and get him to basically say that he thinks that the establishment is going to try to assassinate him. Like, that's the angle that Carlson is going right now. And obviously with somebody as much of a loose cannon as Trump, very worrying knowing what he's been able to do with his base in the past. But, the kind of things and the direction that you see Tucker Carlson trying to take that movement is already bad enough with Trump at the helm. But the way that Carlson is trying to nudge it, the direction that he's trying to nudge it is extremely dark. So we can laugh at the interview. It's funny. But there's some very worrying stuff. But anyways, I'm going to get to questions and see what's on y'all's mind. Feel free to really generally any subject. If I can't answer it, I'll try to get back to you later. But yeah, let's get some questions going. And I'm happy to talk about the debate and all this kind of stuff too. Thanks, Joshua, for the super chat, friend. Hope you're doing well. I know you've been getting into some good music like Crying the Boys. I'm happy to see that. All right, let's see. Albert has a fun one. Hey, I've always wondered, what does the name Texas mean? The name Texas, it actually comes from an indigenous word. Oh, I feel really off on forgetting the tribe. Caddo. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it comes from a Caddo word, which means friend. I mean, the early days of like when the Spanish colonizers came here, the early stories of Texas are actually really wild. One of the first explorers here, and people who ended up obviously brutalizing the natives and all that, basically gets shipwrecked in Texas and gets captured and is sort of held as a kind of healer for a while by some of the native tribes here for years and years and years, which is just could be an interesting film or something to explore in literature. But yeah, no, the word Texas actually means friend, which is a very sweet thing when you think about it. And then obviously not as sweet when you remember the people who gave that name faced brutality in the way that they did. Robot Cat says, Left Reckoning, thoughts on the Texas Tribune layoffs? I'm sure I could probably guess, but would like to get the word out. No, I mean, one, get the word out. I mean, for people who, a lot of people are utilizing this resource even outside of the state, because the Texas Tribune has been filling in a pretty large gap in Texas media coverage. Has been doing excellent reporting. across the board, and is an important resource. I use it a lot. I know a lot of people use it a lot because having something that's statewide like that is free to access to the public, is a really needed resource in a state like this, particularly as so much local media is facing dark and difficult times. So the Texas Tribune, which has been able to fundraise significant amounts of money since it's been in operation, it's fairly recent. They just laid off. They had some significant layoffs, particularly to like their copy editing desk, which is a worrying sign. And while they did that, they expanded their fundraising operations. I think there's going to be some more reporting. I know the Austin Chronicle put out some info. It's sort of wild that Texas still doesn't have a media reporter. Most places have somebody who just reports on the media. We don't have that in this state, or at least at any of the major publications. So I haven't caught up on anything that's come out in the past few hours. I know that there's more reporting promised, but I'll just say off the top of my head, I mean, to me, whatever this is, I'm sure that there's issues with the climate. Running a news operation is really difficult. But this is an outlet that has money, a significant amount of money, frankly. And if you start seeing something like this, it probably means that there's been some mismanagement somewhere. So, certainly if you are in the media and you're listening to this, and you have the ability to lobby for folks, look to hire these people, the people who they've let go, are deserving of their jobs and didn't deserve to be laid off. But it's worrying. I mean, this is one thing that, I've always noted about Texas compared to even other states in the South, is that while so much local and state level reporting has been gutted nationally, it's been lucky for Texas that we still do have some major operations that are running, and up and running and reporting on the state, because there's a lot of really nasty stuff going on here. It's worrying to see an outlet like the Texas Tribune, go through these kind of struggles. And we've seen it throughout the kind of space in Texas media, that a lot of these kind of publications are under tremendous pressure. But this is hot take. I don't have any info on this other than to just sort of my opinion. But I can't imagine that this doesn't have a story of some mismanagement from up top, because again, these are pretty beefy, generally, publications, that at least in regards to the Texas Tribune. Oh, 100% Donald Trump just was hearing about the Panama Canal. That's why he's so awesome when he does these kind of things, because it's new information to him, right? And he has like a childlike wonder. He's like, wow, these mosquitoes, horrible mosquitoes, terrible, vicious mosquitoes. He was on like a whole other planet last night. I mean, usually Trump interviews are freewheeling and wild, but this one, Tucker was prodding him, and just really letting him go. Well, folks, I mean, there's a couple other bits here I wanted to look at. I mean, we've been doing these on the show, so as you guys are getting more questions in there, I think I got to the end of it. I want to pull up one more story. Just give me 1 second here. We've been talking about water criminals during the Griscom streams this month, as we in Austin, at least in other parts of the state, are in a severe drought. We are under water conservation. And it's always amazing to see the way that the rich and powerful try to play by different rules. So we want to zoom in on another kind of general climate criminal, but also in this particular case, a water criminal. This is from a few days ago by Lena Fisher. We've highlighted a good bunch of her reporting on the program before. A great reporter. This is from the Austin Chronicle. Oil executive wants to redirect Austin's drinking water for his private lake. Pending permit would disrupt flows amid severe drought. A multi-millionaire oil executive, Greg Garland, is trying to dam the South Lana River a major tributary into the Highland Lakes, which supplies Austin's drinking water, all for his private 5-acre lake larger than Barton Springs. Last week at a public hearing in Rock Springs, around 200 residents of Llano and Edwards counties spoke against the draft, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality permit that would impound 12.02 acre feet of water for recreational purposes. Although the draft permit says Garland can't store water during low flow conditions last year, commissioners from Llano, Mason, and Kimball County all passed resolutions asking TCEQ to deny the permit altogether in light of the severe drought. Stakeholders representing the LRWA have started a petition with almost 5,000 signatures warning that the proposal sets a dangerous precedent for more private dams to interrupt the already fragile flow of the water, which many rely on for drinking water. The Lower Colorado River Authority data shows zero flow in almost all major tributaries into the Highland Lakes except for Llano. LWRA, Glenn Coleman, says, even though the amount of water requested is not trivial, the real fear is the precedent set. If a wealthy landowner is able to impound a Texas river for his vanity project, it would be a paradigm shift for TCEQ, and it's happening upstream of Austin's water supply. Again, these guys are absolutely criminals, and no small factor here, by the way, that this person is an oil executive, somebody who is already creating the conditions of sparsity and more damage to the ecosystem and the planet. With the idea here that we should even be considering allowing a super rich guy to take water away from the public, things that, in my opinion, belong to the commons, belong to the people, for his own personal vanity project, is just absurd. It should be the fact that it's even being considered, right, just shows how broken our system is. Hopefully the outcry, and a lot of people are pissed off about it, and rightfully so, will stop this from happening. But it's a completely broken system that this person in the first place even came forward. And as we talked about in the last couple of weeks, when it comes to water in the state and all around the country, a lot of times these private corporations will just sort of do first and ask for forgiveness later. Extremely damaging, extremely criminal, and is an example of these kind of fights that we are going to be facing more and more across the West, but all across the country now, as our resources become more sparse because of climate change, because of the profit seekers out there. And these are those kind of wedge issues that I think most people, when they see something like this, they get hot and mad, and they should. Because it's absolutely ridiculous to be sitting here talking about, not only, even in the general sense, should we be allowing some rich guy to be able to pull water so that they can build something cute on their massive ass property. That should be laughed out in the first place. But when you're starting to mess with drinking water, particularly in drought conditions, it just shows that the different plane of existence, the plane of thought of these people, they don't think that they are under the same kind of considerations as the rest of us. Because I sure as hell am not trying to have no interest in taking water away from my neighbors in my community, right? Why should we let some guy here do the same kind of thing? It just shows to me how fundamentally broken our entire political economic system is right now, that we are all sort of suffering collectively. And yet the rich and powerful think that they get to have a separate set of rules. Last week, we talked about what's going down in Hays County, where a private corporation has been over pumping water, something that has played a very significant role in the low flow and the drought situation in Hays County. This is just another example of it. And at least that company was pumping water for people to drink and use, right? And just over pumping, right? Still a problem we talked about last week, water criminals. This guy's not even doing it for anything other than for his own personal vanity and for him to have something to mess around in and plan. Just truly, truly disgusting. Of course, this is a guy with deep connections to the Texas GOP. We'll certainly maybe try to, nudge his way in there. But these are the kind of things, particularly if you're in the area, that you really should be paying attention to, because these people are trying to mess around with basic necessities of life. So you have that, you have what's going down with the company south of Austin that we talked about last week. And as we've noted again, too, Elon Musk, incredible water waster. Somebody who's very likely lying to the local government about how much water he's utilizing, let alone how much water he's damaging with his dumbass boring project, right? Where he's just digging tunnels for fun in Bastrop. These guys are playing under, this is the kind of shit that, like, if you aren't a socialist, if you're not somebody who thinks that there are problems with the system, this is something that should really test your faith. Yeah, let's see if we got any more questions or anything like that, and then we can maybe talk a little bit more generally. How do we feel about Vivek's take on climate change during the debate? I mean, this guy is probably one of the most cynical people out there. I mean, Vivek, if you watched the debate last night, I mean, Vivek really is the embodiment of a worrying direction in the right wing. For people who didn't catch it, Vivek, I'm sure most people have seen it by now, but Vivek said that climate change is a hoax. I mean, this is somebody who I truly believe is like an absolute cynic. Is somebody who knows better and is sort of saying like the opposite. Because even in the Republican Party, right, there was no kind of groundswell of support or acknowledgement of the problem of climate change. But to just come out there and say it in the way that he's saying is extremely damaging. I don't think that there's much room for Vivek. I think that in the terms of maybe like beating a Donald Trump, I think Donald Trump sort of has this secured at this point. So barring the mugshot when it comes out in a couple hours or whenever it comes out, I think that Trump's probably going to get the GOP nomination as we're sitting now. But Vivek, I think, shows is like just a really nasty symptom of the Republican Party and the Republican politics. I mean, this is a guy with, the thing about Vivek that's sort of notable is how he is somebody who I think is an embodiment of some really sinister developments within the Republican Party, really driven by, a lot of people online. Like, this guy's a true, like, Reddit edgelord kind of character. And those guys are out there and they are dangerous. And what they think and what they want to do in the world is really, really frightening. We'll have to see how well that plays with the GOP. I mean, this is somebody who, I don't know if people caught it, but, this is somebody who wants to deny Americans the right to vote. He wants people to have to take a test to be able to vote, right? Which, if you don't know much about American history, is one of the most sinister and cynical ways to sort of disenfranchise poor and working class people, and was certainly used, for example, in the Jim Crow South, to disenfranchise Black people and also to disenfranchise poor whites. He goes on about this and then said that the Constitution inspired the American Revolution, right? The most asinine and ridiculous take ever, because if you know anything about American history, the Constitution comes much later than the American Revolution. So even on the metric that he's sort of putting up as the barrier to entry to participate in American politics, he's not even capable of doing that. These guys are sinister, cynical people. I don't think that you should ignore these folks at all. I think that, like, the fact that somebody like that is doing as well in the polls as he's been doing, is sitting there close to the center of the stage, should be something that worries you. And he's certainly trying to tap in to the Trump phenomenon. I don't know how well he's going to be able to hold on to any enthusiasm that he's gotten in the past few weeks, but we will see. Comrade Cat Pernicus says, the rich will exploit the planet and all the people and life on it unless we have representatives stopping them. Too bad most of our politicians are aligned with the rich and their horrible interests. Absolutely. I mean, like one of the best examples of this is somebody like Elon Musk, right? Somebody who has shown time and time again. Somebody who's shown time and time again that this guy has no care, frankly, for the environment and certainly for the communities that he operates in. For people who haven't caught it, the Justice Department is suing him for the discrimination in South Texas with his SpaceX company for horrific violations when it comes to discrimination against migrants and people who have come to this country seeking asylum. Right? He's going to South Texas and is doing that. Same thing happened with Tesla in California. Why does he move a lot of his operations to Texas? Well, it's because his company is being investigated for egregious racism. We did a whole video on this if you haven't caught it before. I'm not somebody who is quick to throw those things around. This is some of the most egregious stuff that I've ever seen, the allegations that were coming out against Elon Musk's facilities in California, where they were making Black workers work in some of the most physically demanding and dangerous parts of the plant. And in fact, people in the company were calling that part of the plant the plantation. Right? No subtext needed, right? That's right in front of your face. So this is somebody who abuses people wherever he goes. And then you have elected officials opening up the door to him, right? So right here in Travis County, where he's, where I live in Austin, where he's now built his big, Tesla factory. We gave him tremendous amounts of money, tremendous amounts of tax breaks and incentives for him to come out here with the promise, oh, I'll be hiring these kind of workers. We're going to be doing all this kind of stuff. Well, we're waiting for a lot of that. Also, the promises he made about how much water they're going to be using, he has not lived up to it, right? He comes in, he's like, oh, we're going to collect rainwater and be one of the greenest facilities in the country, right? Well, we're still waiting on that. And in fact, it looks like he's has overused water more than he estimated and promised when he first came out here, right? And that comes down to elected officials. And why are elected officials so cowardly? Well, yeah, certainly the first question, a lot of them are bought out, but it also comes down to a fundamental reality about American politics, right? And why you need to have people who have a systemic critique of capitalism, not just people who might be progressives or liberals. Because what ends up happening is these elected officials, particularly local, city, and county level officials, well, all power is held in private hands. So if you want to see some kind of economic development, then what do you have to do? Well, the state's not doing it, right? Joe Biden showed with the IRA that the state's not very interested in directing state investment, even when it comes to fighting climate change. They just sort of want to beg and give incentives to the rich and powerful and hope that they do the things that we want them to do. So what happens with local and city governments? Well, they're fighting against each other. And what's the tool that they have? Well, it's making sure that the rich pay less in taxes, right? So there's a systemic reason why local officials are so spineless when it comes to dealing with these kind of figures. Doesn't mean that they can't overcome that. It doesn't mean that movements can't overcome it. But if you want to have a better understanding as to why it happens, you have to understand the engine, right? The force behind these kind of decisions. And that's what's going on across this country. And it's extremely damaging for the planet. It's extremely damaging for labor. And it absolutely needs to change. And I agree. I think that this is, fair. I'm also usually, a little hesitant about the fascist label too. But Vivek does seem like an accelerationist. I think that, even the message, he's like, we're living in a dystopia right now, right? Obviously we live in a messed up country, but from where he's coming from, I think it's a really dangerous message. And also, like, so much, by the way, for the GOP becoming a party for the working class, right? Anyone who's still pushing that argument is out of their mind. How many of the conversations were we having last night during the Republican debate about things that really affect everyday working people, apart from talking about inflation, right, and things like that? But they're just saying that because it's critical of Joe Biden, right? There's no strategy or anything about it, because what their strategy is waging war on unions, right? That was like the biggest applause line during the debate last night. So we need to strangle and defeat the teachers' unions, dismantle the education system in this country, right? These aren't things that help out working people. These are things, though, that allow private corporations, right? If you're talking about privatizing the American education system, what does that mean? Well, it means a bunch of little freaks get to come in and take money out of the public coffers and fatten up on it. That's what they're talking about when they're saying, oh, we need to return power to the parents. They're not talking about empowering parents. They say we want to take money that belongs to the community, that belongs to the state, that belongs to the people, and we want to put it in the pockets of the wealthy and speculative industries and figures in the society, right? None of this stuff has anything to do with empowering working class people or making their lives better. And last night, I think, sort of showed, right? Because you had a full spectrum of the Republican Party, right? From Vivek, absolutely wild, cynical, red-pilled, lunatic, to somebody like Nikki Haley, who is mad that we were using social spending during the COVID-19 pandemic to make sure that people didn't starve. And frankly, I've always been, we should have been doing way more for people. And also what Trump's kind of stimulus plans during COVID-19 were massive giveaways to the rich and powerful, right? So I'm not coming out here saying that these things were good enough of themselves, but they're not mad that the wealthy were able to make some money during the COVID-19 pandemic. They were mad because people got $1,200 checks, and some people who were at the bottom of the wage scale said, hey, you know what? I don't think I need to work this kind of job anymore because I have a little bit of wiggle room to maybe find something better for myself. So much for the GOP being the new party of the working class. All right, let's see. Again, I'm going to be talking on This is Revolution in about 2 hours with Jason Miles about some Texas politics stuff. So be sure to tune in there. I'll try to take a couple more questions if we have any, but if not, I might run in a second. So if you have any, get them in now. Our good friend from Australia says, did you read Ronan Farrow's piece on Elon Musk in the New Yorker this week? It's about how Musk was able to fill in gaps in civil needs, NASA energy, and et cetera, and made himself crucial to officials. I haven't, but no, I mean, Musk only exists because of the decay of the American state. I 100%, that's what I think, right? Like, this is somebody who is, Michael, and we would always make this point. It's like, this guy's a glorified government contractor, but why is the government relying on all these kind of contractors? It's because the government has lost its ability to be able to do big, bold things. So they have to sort of, put their hand out to grifters like Musk and the whole entirety of the kind of private invasion of what should be the public sphere. So he ends up becoming somebody who has a lot of influence in politics, and it's pretty disgusting to see. All right, let's see if we got any more before we run. Adele asks me about HB5. I need to do more on that. I think we might put something together soon, so keep your eye out for that. And I think that might be it, folks. This Sunday, we got a really, really exciting patron bonus episode coming up. Our good friend, Arm Brown, you know him from his excellent YouTube show. And if you're not already subscribing and watching that, you definitely should. He's going to be joining Matt and I for a reading series that we've been wanting to do for a long time. We're going to tackle the Communist Manifesto, which is a text that is fundamental obviously to the socialist movement, to Marxism, but it's also one that I think a lot of people, even on the left, aren't as familiar with as they should be. So we're going to be doing a deep dive into that. I think it's going to be a 2-part series. The first one's going to be up this Sunday. Arm Brown's going to be joining myself and Matt. It's going to be a lot of fun. You can get access to that, early access to that, patreon.com/leftreckoning. Eventually, we do put those out to the public, but we usually hold them for a few months so we can give our patrons early access to all of that. So if you've been on the fence about subscribing, this is one that you are really going to want to see. I'm really looking forward to doing it. It's been a lot of fun prepping for it. It's going to be out this Sunday, part 1. Matt Leck, myself, Arm Brown taking on the Communist Manifesto. It's going to be a good time. So sign up and get access to that. Patreon.com/leftreckoning. Friends, I'm going to be on This Is Revolution in just a couple hours with Jason Miles talking about Texas. Really looking forward to that as well. Everyone else, have a good weekend, and we'll see you back next Tuesday.